So this famous letter deals with the book burning in Drake, North Dakota. And this became a national controversy, specifically because the books had been burned. If you're not aware, you might find it interesting to know that book burning um, was a part of the Nazi campaign in World War II. So that connection to World War II definitely probably influenced Vonnegut's reaction in some regard. And you do see that he talks a lot about American values and censorship. So, of course, he would take that very personally. But you want to be thinking about the way he makes his argument. Okay, so you see ethos, pathos, and logos in all three working in this letter. And his argument is essentially that burning his books is wrong. However, to make that argument, he uses the argument that he is very real. Well, why? What does that mean? His sort of thought process here is that the banning of this book, making it inappropriate for it's inappropriate for children, as if it's some sort of evil or scandalized thing. But remember that the original title for Slaughterhouse Five is Slaughterhouse Five: The Children's Crusade. And where the title The Children's Crusade comes from is from a conversation that Vonnegut, writing about himself writing the book, as I showed you he does in the first chapter, and a conversation that he has with his war buddy's wife. And she essentially, what she says, she tells him, "You were just babies," and he agrees with her and says that yeah, they were basically just on the edge of their childhood when all of this happened to them. And she asks, "But are you going to write your book that way?" And he says he doesn't know. And she replies with this. She says, "Of course you won't. You'll pretend you were men instead of babies, and you'll be portrayed in the movies by Frank Sinatra and John Wayne or some of those other glamorous, war-loving, dirty old men. And war will look just wonderful, so we'll have a lot more of them. And they'll be fought by babies like the babies upstairs." Her children are upstairs while they're having this conversation. And Kurt Vonnegut goes on to have this realization that her problem with his book is that she doesn't all of the sort of narratives out there about war glorified and treat it as this sort of noble adventure rather than recognizing sort of the trauma that it puts these young men through. And that becomes the guiding premise of the book. And Vonnegut realizes that she thinks books and movies and the way they represent war are what promote it or create that idea among young people. And he, has this realization and responds to her, "I tell you what, I'll name it the Children's Crusade." And he did. Now, consider this with what it would mean to him that his book, which is about sort of correcting this narrative about young people in war, being burned because it's too violent or too coarse for young people. In Vonnegut's eyes, this book is about things that happen to him, things that are real, things that are his life. And what the school board has done is essentially say this is inappropriate for children. And in Vonnegut's mind, that very likely is, hypocrisy because he was basically a child when he experienced it. He also, I want to point to a specific quote that he uses that I think is relevant to consider when you're thinking about the rhetoric in this text. "If you were to bother to read my books, to behave as educated persons would, you would learn that they are not sexy and do not argue in favor of wildness of any kind. They beg that people be kinder and more responsible than they often are. It is true that some of the characters speak coarsely. That is because people speak coarsely in real life, especially soldiers and hardworking men speak coarsely. And even our most sheltered children know that. And we all know, too, that those words don't really damage children much. They didn't damage us when we were young. It was evil deeds and lying that hurt us." So, what Vonnegut is essentially saying here, and what the whole premise of I Am Real is he's saying, yes, my book contains curse words, my book contains sexuality, because the real world contains curse words and contains sexuality. And those things don't hurt kids as much as lying to them and the evil deeds of the world. Um, This is a very interesting and compelling argument, of course, but the way that he makes it, the rhetorical moves that he makes in that argument are particularly notable for how the rhetoric and the style is working in this particular letter.